Remember, earlier this week on the WDW Pro channel, Valiant Renegade and I, plus I think Lauren Connor was in that video, we all talked about a recent rumor that I had received about Disney going to cut jobs. And we talked about how this was going to be another big job cut. We talked about it in relationship to the negative content that we're getting from Disney, where Disney isn't seeming to appear as readily on the Nielsen ratings as they had in the past. That despite their subscription numbers supposedly going up, and we believe that to be true, although they've stagnated in North America. But if we take a look at this article, this one out of Fox Business by Chris Pandolfo, Disney managers told to identify layoff candidates. This is literally exactly what we said. Chris, I appreciate you watching the channel. With 4K, that's 4,000 job cuts expected by April. And by the way, according to my source, and I cannot verify this, although I can tell you that we reported on the source, and now the mainstream media is saying the exact same thing. So make of that what you will. But according to the source that we spoke with, this is not the end of that number. That number I expect to grow. Again, I cannot verify it. Disney managers were given an April deadline to propose budget cuts and make a list of employees to be laid off as CEO Bob Iger seeks to save billions of dollars by restructuring and cutting content from Disney Plus, ESPN, and Hulu. After announcing a plan to slash nearly 7,000 jobs, Disney is reportedly instructing managers to propose budget cuts and put together a list of employees to be laid off in the coming weeks. It is unclear whether Disney will begin layoffs in small waves or cut thousands of employees all at once. But the company will announce, and here's the thing you got to remember, at least 4,000 current employees will be out of work sometime in April, according to Business Insider.
First of all, that
doesn't make us happy. That's exactly right. That does not make us happy. If you are someone in danger of losing your job, it brings us absolutely zero joy to report on that. But we have to report on what we know and what we're told. And so that's what we've been doing. I have the opinion that this is largely being driven by the fact that Disney is not growing, that Disney Plus is not increasing subscriptions at the rate that we're, well, even close to what we had anticipated in the past. Meanwhile, Netflix continues to grow by millions every quarter, which takes away the idea that the streaming subscriptions out there have somehow saturated the market. No, that's not the case. So, Jonas, what do you think about these additional layoffs coming to Disney? And particularly, I'm interested in, why are we not hearing the same kind of shrieking, howling, screaming, bemoaning, crying, and sobbing about Bob Iger that we heard about Bob Chapek? Remember, it was all doom and gloom for Disney when Chapek said that he was going to cut jobs. Here comes Iger, and it seems like we're cutting more.
Well, let's start with the most obvious point here is that Bob Chapek is a businessman, and Bob Iger is a communicator who also does business. The man, he is just buttery smooth when it comes to interviews. It's so rare to see him take a misstep in communication. So everybody likes Bob Iger, despite some reasons maybe not to.
He's the charisma king, you might say.
He's also on the correct side of the political divide for most of the trades who would be reporting on this.
Exactly. Now, what do you make of the content issue? Do you see there to be a correlation that it's not just that Disney is somehow bloated and needs to cut jobs, but rather, and this is what's amazing to me, the company refuses to course correct. They will cut people from their positions. They will downsize. They will cut content. They will cut budgets, but they will not cut woke. What do you think of it?
I see. This is what I need to learn, Pro, is that when you go straight to me above anyone else, you're waiting for me to say, it's because they went woke.
It's
get
because
woke.
they went woke and they
Go
went
broke. Yes,
there you go.
Broke. Of course, the content is just grown worthy, and you can only get people into theaters expecting a good movie so many times. There's a great line from Lost, actually. Sawyer, he says, you can only slap a dog so many times before he starts to believe it's his fault. People go to these movies over and over again expecting to have a good time, and all they do is get preached to, and they get told they're wrong, they're bad, the color of their skin makes them inherently evil, or at least they're going to keep implying it until they outright say it.
Stephen, Mike, any thoughts on this one?
Does that mean they're cutting at least 4K people who aren't woke? Is that where they're going?
Well, we'll have to see about that. It turns out that when the company goes down, all suffer inside the company. I will tell you this, though, Stephen.
Yeah.
According to all the statistics we have, donations from Disney employees to political organizations indicate that 90% of Disney political affiliations tend to be in a particular direction. We'll let the audience decide what that might be, but the chances of people losing their jobs who are of one direction that's opposite what Disney has been doing is significantly lower, if only because there are so few there.
Yeah.
So what that sounds like to me is they have institutional ideological capture.
No, that's exactly right. And let's say, too, this is a key point also for everybody in the audience. If 90% of Disney's political contributions go in one particular direction, then you should know that the 10% that remains is almost certainly highly concentrated out of Walt Disney World, employees, therefore meaning that outside of Florida, when you're talking about the employees who are over in California and elsewhere, it's even more staggering in terms of the ratio of people being hired. And it almost seems that it would have to be intentional, because it would be very difficult to naturally create a system where that percentage of people are all politically aligned in one direction under one company.
Does this fall under religious ideology that they believe this is the way to go, even if it's the self-destruction of their own company? Yeah, this is the way. Exactly. But you guys covered this about a couple of weeks ago. You said this thing that they're going to hold their ground with this type of message.
It's amazing.
It's
amazing that they're going down like this and they won't change. They've had one of the worst 2 weeks that I've ever seen, and they refuse to do anything to change. In fact, the latest HR hire, the lady out of ESPN,
promotion.
Looks to me, she's over all of HR now, over all of Disney. I see no indication whatsoever that she is anything less than pursuing everything they've been doing in the past.
And Stephen, I hinted at it before and you asked, but yes, this is basically a religious view. They have a worldview that they in the absence of some other higher calling, men can tend to come up with their own moral standards for which to judge the world and make themselves better. And right now we're all comparing ourselves to each other if we're not comparing ourselves to a higher power. Not to get too philosophical here on Renegade Online, but when you don't call on a higher power, you create your own higher power, and there's only one sin they're looking for, and it's oppression.
Well, so and let's say this too. So we're not here to push religious or political beliefs on anybody. So if you're a person who has completely different beliefs, or you have completely different political positions than what you might assume would be held by people on the channel, you're still totally welcome. And we want to have free and open and fair discourse. What we're talking about here is that when you remove the diversity of beliefs, the true diversity, right? Not the immutable differences. So say the color of one's skin. But if you remove the actual thought-based diversity inside your company, then you put your company into an unhealthy place, because your company no longer has the discourse inside of it that it needs. So Disney has become monolithic in its thinking. And when you become monolithic in your thinking, what happens is that you begin to make bad decisions because nobody is there to say, hey, that's a really bad idea. We shouldn't do that. And so therefore, if you turn your company either into a left or right-leaning company without diversity of opinions inside of it, then financial ruin awaits. And that's what we're seeing.
But Pro, you're perfectly describing the Simpsons episode where those weirdos built a gold statue of Homer on the front lawn.
The Simpsons said it. Simpsons did it.
Yeah, Simpsons did it. So eventually you're going to see a giant gold statue of Bob Iger somewhere.
Absolutely. They'll do it somewhere.
That's very true. But you look at that cult of personality. When you have a company like this, it was just like the cult of personality around Steve Jobs, which was earned, but also got him into a position where he could get away with a lot until the profits weren't there, which that came after. We could argue that he would have still kept going on that parade if he had not, unfortunately, passed. But
sure.
When you have a cult of personality around a company, it creates an untenable situation when you have shareholder, if there would ever be shareholder resistance.